Sexual and physical abuse of women in ethnic, faith-based communities is hugely underreported in Britain. A culture of honour and shame exists that is so powerful it stops victims from speaking out, leaving them more vulnerable to abuse. This has led to an assumption that upsetting or offending Britain's diverse communities have been prioritised over the safety of women and girls. Consequently, forced marriages and honour-based violent crimes remain hidden within Britain's multicultural society. An honour killing is the most extreme form of honour-based violence, where usually a daughter or wife is thought to have brought shame upon a family and is killed to restore the family honour. Women can become targets of honour-based violence for choosing their own husband, leaving an arranged marriage, becoming the subject of gossip, or becoming westernised. The consequences are forcing marriage, rape, or other forms of violence, including kidnap and false imprisonment and acid attacks. Domestic abuse or disownment is often seen as a lesser response. Amy Kaur grew up in a strict Indian family in England, where she was forced into an arranged marriage at 21. She was physically and sexually abused and beaten by her husband on many occasions. The marriage finished when her husband left her after trying to frame her for attempted murder.
Well, it was called an arranged marriage, but I had no choice. When my parents had said yes to him, I had to agree. I didn't like him, but I had to agree. I was too scared to say no. There's no honour in arranged marriages. I think it should be called dishonourable because nothing that they do, it's not about happiness of the girls. It's not about happiness even to the boys nowadays, because boys go out and, have girlfriends when they go to uni and they get bullied and forced into marriages as well. So it's on both sides. Where's the honour in that?
Amy's parents forced her to marry again. When Amy was raped, she turned to her family for help, but instead of helping her, Amy's family disowned her.
Well, I was sexually abused, raped twice in my life, and didn't tell anyone the first time. Second time, on the day I did, I got disowned by my family basically because they didn't want to hear my story, and the people who'd done it to me had come up with a different story to tell my family, and that story was believed over mine. I got disowned instead. You just feel dirty, shame, and how strangers can be believed over you. You get called every name under the sun.
In 2008, Amy was suffering with severe depression and was sectioned under the Mental Health Act.
You think you've worked through it, but then it comes and bites you on your bum about 20 years later. And it did, me, because I thought I was strong and not going to let anything get to me. But yeah, in 2010, I got sectioned a second time. And since then, I think I've survived, and I've got a voice now. And I'm still disowned, but I think a family like that, do I need them around me? I don't think so.
After London, the West Midlands has the largest proportion of forced marriage cases. A new report examining why victims from South Asian communities in Coventry do not disclose or report their abuse reveals that many victims are silenced by a culture of honour and shame. Fear of further retribution prevents them from reporting the crime. They fear they will be cut off from their community. Dr. Manjeet Rihal is an outreach worker at Coventry Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, a psychologist and author of the report, The Price of Honour.
As I belong to this community, I'm ethnic background, I would say. I know from the fact these things are happening, but when I reached to these survivors, some of their experiences really shocked me. The experiences where parents should be loving their children unconditional. Here, parents are saying for the sake of honor, they can leave their children, but they cannot leave their community. That was most striking things. What are they going to do? They can leave their children and they want to live in the community. British children, they are born and brought up here. They brought up with their British friends and British, other children. They want to know about this British culture. But when they go home, they have different culture. So I feel sorry for our children. They live in this confusing world. Outside world is different. When they come home, that is different. They have to put a mask on. And I would feel like they should not have that. They should have that freedom of whatever their rights are. That's a frightening thing. I know the families are most important for us, but when they come to the family, some of the issues, they come home, they are different. When they have to accommodate with these issues. So that is confusing. That lead to lots of things, like say violence. They have to keep quiet because of their family owner. They are taught at home. When they go to school, go outside, they are taught in different ways. You have to tell, but they are juggling in between this freedom and this culture and that culture. They go from home. They know they have to obey that because they will have to come back home. Where they will go if they will disclose, so they have to come to that mask, and they have to put their zip on. They have to shut their mouth for their honor and shame, or honor, I would say.
Last year, the government's forced marriage unit dealt with 1,302 cases. Women from Southeast Asian backgrounds made up for 63% of all reported cases. 48% were of university age between 18 and 25. 82% of cases involved women. The rest were men. Pakistan and Bangladesh were the most common countries where victims of forced marriages were sent to, 42.7% and 10.9% respectively. However, police forces across the country are failing to record honour-based violent crimes, making it difficult to ascertain how many forced marriages are taking place. In 2011, the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation sent freedom of information requests to all 52 police forces in the UK, asking how many incidents of honour-based violence they had recorded. Only 39 forces responded, with a total of 2,823 incidents. Diana Nami is the executive director of the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation and says political correctness takes precedent over the safety of vulnerable women from multicultural communities.
The issue of cultural relativism and also the political correctness has become a huge problem in, tackling the crime as it should be. And the Radaram scandal is an example, a new example of that. And I'm sure HBV it is. Honor-based violence, it is the same. We have faces lots of from different governments, organizations, and especially police and education, that many times they rejected to allow us to work on a case or to support a case, or even to raise awareness within schools or train teachers on this issue. And all the time they say that the community will be upset, or it will. The concern about the community was for them and is up to now much more important than the saving life of children, women and girls. And for us, this is important that government to hear the voice of vulnerable girls, vulnerable women, and who will be upset in the community. Of course, those people who are practicing it. Many organizations, they say if we talk about HPV or forced marriage or FGM, we stigmatizing community. Whereas our view is that practicing honor-based violence and forced marriage and female genital mutilation actually allowing just stigmatization of any community, not preventing it. So the things is upside down. We have to put it in its place and make sure that government and all their organization are really treating women equally, consider HPV as a crime. And we are hoping to raise a campaign that consider these things honor-based violence as a crime in itself, not just part of a murder case, because we had cases like Shafila Ahmad that police even were not very, confident to say that it was an honor killing case. Up to very latest time, they only say it is a murder case, whereas they never found the body of her. So this is the situation. We need police to be more confident and other groups to talk about that, to consider that women from minority community are part of the society and they should be treated equally. Their crimes and the crime that they are facing and their rights to be the same, perpetrators to be treated as a perpetrator, as someone that is a threat for their family, for the community, for the whole society. We need those changes to be made. This is abuse, and we don't want that women's rights to be jeopardized under the name of their culture, under the name of their religion. This is discrimination which we want to prevent it. And actually, this is not helping them. And considering the issue of culture, in my opinion, is a very serious racist attitude.
ICRO are currently awaiting responses from all police forces for the most recent honour-based violence figures. According to the United Nations, 5,000 women and girls worldwide are killed each year by members of their own family. It's thought 12 honour killings, which are usually premeditated murders, take place per year in the UK. A film called Banaz, A Love Story was released 2 years ago. It tells the true story of Banaz Mahmoud. She was born in Iraq and moved to England with her family when she was 10 years old. At 17, she was forced to marry a man 10 years her senior. The marriage turned violent. Banaz fell in love with someone else and wanted a divorce. Her family found this behaviour to be shameful. The film shows footage of Banaz telling officers at a police station that if anything happens to me, it's them. Banaz went to the police 5 times. On the orders of her father and uncle, Banaz was strangled with a bootlace by 2 cousins at her home in South London, stuffed into a suitcase and transported to the Midlands. Her remains were discovered in a shallow grave in Birmingham. Her father, Mahmoud Mahmoud, and her uncle, Ari Mahmoud, were jailed for life in 2007. Her 2 cousins were jailed for a minimum of 21 years for killing their relative. A report published last September looked at the sexual exploitation of Muslim and Asian girls and young women in the UK. The Muslim Women's Network felt that the media in Britain were only concentrating on the sexual abuse and exploitation of white girls, and the issue had become a religious and race matter, not one centred on abuse. By ignoring all of the other victims of sexual exploitation, the Muslim Women's Network were concerned that victims were becoming even more vulnerable because perpetrators knew no one was looking for them. The Unheard Voices report suggested a tendency among families and communities to blame the victims rather than the male offenders. It also found that preserving the honour of the community was prioritised over the safety of vulnerable girls. Mandy Sangera, a human rights campaigner and government advisor on forced marriage, works with vulnerable adults who have suffered long-term sexual and violent abuse in the name of honour. She says culture and ethnicity is relevant when talking about honour-based violence.
When a child's been forced into a marriage, there's some big motivating factors. Sometimes it's about the izzat. It's about having honour and keeping face in the community and about, kind of not bringing shame on. Sometimes it's for immigration. Sometimes people are promised to marry a cousin or whatever in India or Pakistan, and families feel like they can't go back on their word. So there are so many different motivating factors for disabled people. Sometimes they want to get rid of the stigma of disability and they want to have a carer for the person, and they don't even see that they're breaking the law. This is the problem. They say, well, this is our religious practices. And what I have to say to families is that actually forcing someone into a marriage or forcing someone to do something against their will is not kind of a religious practice. It's a cultural practice, and I think professionals need to be very clear about the differences between religious and cultural practices.
Forced marriage became a criminal offence in England and Wales in June 2014. Scotland criminalised it on the 30th of September. The legislation protects people in England, Wales and Scotland and applies to British citizens overseas who are at risk of being forced to marry someone against their will. The maximum penalty for the offence is 7 years in jail. The new criminal offence works in conjunction with the existing forced marriage protection orders, which allow victims to choose between a civil or criminal option to pursue perpetrators. Mandy Sangera welcomes the legislation, but warns that the situation in Britain is explosive.
I think we're sitting on a bit of a ticking time bomb anyway. I mean, I left school in the 80s and a lot of my South Asian friends were going through school and they all kind of knew that their families were going to find them somebody. They knew that they were going to be going through an arranged marriage. It was almost like a rite to passage. It's like the FGM sometimes when I talk to victims there. They'll say, oh, but Mandy, it's nothing new. I knew about it. I knew it was happening. And it's sometimes trying to educate. But actually young children from many different backgrounds are really struggling, and it's about the identity, because actually places like mosque and temples are kind of out of touch for young people. And if not, there's lots of young people now that are kind of falling into terror, acting as martyrs and going across to the UK, which we're sitting on it's a very sad place right now, the UK, for young people. And I think it's trying to engage with them again, and it's about them finding a balance. It's about families allowing their children to have a little bit of freedom. And again, you only have to turn on a TV channel and watch a music video and the people are kind of almost wearing absolutely nothing. And I know there's all this, I think children are really kind of sexualized very early on. It's like, you watch a TV channel and you just flick on and it might just be an ordinary channel. So things that are coming on TV now way before the watershed that kind of shocks me sometimes, even soaps and things where you think, oh, actually there may not be. They're tackling issues and children are really confused. And parents are trying to hold on to their culture, hold on to their religion. The one thing that I really struggle with is actually people my generation, people who were born and raised in the UK, who are in their 40s and 50s, are kind of still forcing their children into marriages. I mean, fair enough, you could probably understand, my parents' generation trying to hold on to their culture and their religion and their beliefs and everything. But actually, I really struggle sometimes as an individual about people my own age group, the second and the third generation, still taking their children abroad to get married. I sometimes struggle with that. I think people are aware that sexual violence is a real issue in the South Asian community, but actually it's about trying to say, well, actually abuse is abuse and rape is rape. And actually you have a right to say no. So that's another work that needs to be done in the communities, because actually, if a young person has been raped in a marriage and she goes back and asks for help, a family will say, no, it doesn't matter, it's part of marriage, it's part of life, you just have to put up with it. You have a right to say no.
Sexual violence devastates the lives of victims, survivors and their families, often instilling fear within a community. Women and girls suffer in silence. They live in fear that if they disclose their abuse, they will bring shame and dishonour on the family. Many survivors face being disowned by their family and kicked out of home, like Amy, who paid the price for her freedom.
The freedom you get from, and the strongness you get, and the freedom to live your life the way you want to and to raise your kids when you have them in your own way is better than anything else. That's what I've got from it. I don't have to answer to anybody. I live my life the way I want to. I've raised my girls the way I want them to be raised. And nobody can turn around and have my girls having arranged marriages or anything. They pick and choose, because when I said it, yes, I meant it. And that my girls know that. So, yes, it is a hard journey, but I didn't know at the time. There is so much help out there. I didn't know at the time. I wish I had known.
It's hoped the report, The Price of Honour, which focuses on sexual violence suffered by South Asian women in Coventry, will eventually lead to changes in attitudes within Britain's multicultural communities where the voice of a victim is never heard.